this episode to kind of tie it all together and put a bow in the nutrition portion of this podcast. That seems to be the question I get the most from people, is like, what should I eat? What's the best thing to eat? So that's what I started with, and I'm going to try to bring it home in this episode. And I'm going to do that via the concept of the square. So the square is a concept I've used to very, very positive effect with my clients in recent times. This is a relatively recent, meaning in the past year or two, concept that I introduced with my clients. But it's something that I've built for years. This is the culmination of, over 15 years as a trainer and as a coach. And it should sound familiar to you if you've been listening to this podcast. But basically the concept of a square is whatever you designate as to be appropriate food for you. And I've already spoken about what food should be included and what shouldn't. It should be meat and fruit inside that square, and you should essentially try getting rid of everything else. That sounds really, really extreme, I know, and regular people are going to be listening to this and just think that's so ridiculous, meat and fruit. But again, when you realize what I mean by meat and fruit, it's actually much larger. The square is much larger than it sounds. Any animal protein that includes eggs, includes fish, includes red meat, includes chicken. It also includes dairy. So dairy I would include in meat, but it's one of those ones where not everyone does well with dairy, and not everyone does well with dairy in high amounts. For me, I realized that once I switched to more ancestrally appropriate diet, my ability to digest and utilize the nutrients from dairy went up dramatically, meaning I could tolerate it. I didn't have lactose intolerance, and it was much better for me. But again, that's kind of a case-by-case basis. The animal protein should be a lot better. For most people, they're going to digest that a lot better. And then fruit. Okay, so fruit, people say, fruit, they think of just the sweet fruits. There are plenty of non-sweet fruits as well. So avocado, tomato, cucumber, squash, olive. We've spoken about this before, so I don't want to go too far into it, but realize that fruit is a very wide-ranging food group. And those are really the two sources of food that human beings have evolved to eat. Those are the two, only one of them wants to be eaten, of course. An animal doesn't want to be eaten, but the difference with an animal and a vegetable is an animal has teeth and claws, and it can run and it can fight, and it has evolved other means to protect itself in this evolutionary race to pass its genes on to the next generation. So its strategy for defending itself and not getting eaten is to run or claw or kick or scratch. Cows are a little bit different because they're pretty docile, and they'll kind of do, cows and sheep and domesticated animals tend to be quite docile and sort of allow themselves, again, I don't want to go too far into this, we'll have this on another podcast, but they sort of allow themselves to be put in a position where we can ultimately kill them to eat them. That is, if you think about it, is another strategy that they've used, where their genes, at least not themselves, but their genes realized that by having a huge cattle industry or sheep, lamb industry or whatever it is, being a source of food for humans actually makes them very successful on a genetic level. They are able to proliferate and have, cows have basically usurped all other big game, large fauna. So from a genetic, same with chicken, same with lamb probably. They're very successful on a genetic level. Again, let's not go too far into that because that's a bit of a barbed wire topic. But so essentially, bringing it back home, human beings have evolved to eat meat and fruit. Now, that is my square. My square is meat and fruit. Now, I always say to people, if you want to do strippers and cocaine, you can do it, but do it in the square. If you want to be boring and go to bed at night, at 8 o'clock at night, and get up early and be really boring, then you can do that in the square. What the hell am I talking about? What I mean is, if you want to really have fun with this stuff and eat 4 pounds of ribs in a day or in a sitting, you can do that because it's in the square. There are no other limitations within that square apart from what foods you eat. Same thing if you don't want to touch meat. So this is technically, you could be a vegan here. You could just eat fruits, right? If you are a vegan, I would recommend adding coconut oil and palm oil. So I would eat as much coconut as possible because saturated fats are really, really beneficial for your body. Nutrient dense, good for your hormones and stuff. You'll suffer without that. And if you're vegetarian, you could just include dairy or eggs. If you're lacto-ovo vegetarian, if you're pescatarian, you could just have fish. I'm not telling you what to do. I really don't like to tell people what to do because because the most important thing is you listen to your body. That is the most important thing. And you're able to do that if you have some structure. People are better able to listen to their body if they have some North Star, some guidelines. And the meat and fruit diet, right? The caveman diet gives enough structure that people know what they can and can't eat. And then it gives them enough freedom. You need that balance between structure and freedom to actually navigate this successfully. If I just said eat whatever you want all the time, people don't do well with that. It's nice in theory, but if I just say eat whatever you want, it doesn't really work for people. People will get confused and there's too many choices, especially now. We live in an unnaturally abundant age where we have all types of foods thrown at us all the time, messages on TV, or you're like commercials for foods all the time. And we walk down the street and you can smell a Subway like wafting that. We bombarded with messages about food. So you do need some structure, but you also need freedom. So within that square, what you eat is limited, but when you eat, so if you woke up at 2 a.m. and you felt like eating, how much you eat. I don't count calories, okay? I don't count calories. This probably deserves a whole podcast, counting calories, which I might do in the next one, we'll see. I think it's an unhealthy way to live long term. I've done it before, and I don't think it is based on limitation and lack, and human beings do not like to be limited, especially when it comes to food, which is a super primal drive. We do not want to be limited with our food, or you can only have budgeting our food calories. It's just a ridiculous way to live. Like, people don't do well with it at all. So yeah, I don't count calories. I don't think about how much I'm eating. I listen to my body. You keep eating what you want. When it doesn't taste good anymore, stop. When you're physically uncomfortable, stop, right? So you need to learn the green light and the red light. When am I hungry? What do I want? That's the green light. This doesn't taste good anymore. I'm full. That's the red light. That takes some calibration. A lot of people aren't very good at that. So that does take some calibration. So you eat when you want. Within the square, you eat what you want, and you stop eating when it doesn't taste good anymore. And you eat as much as you like. So there's a lot of freedom actually to this square. So people don't realize that sometimes when you restrict something, when you do place certain limitations, it actually gives you more freedom. Whereas if you just eat whatever you want and you don't have any sort of guidelines about what to eat, people actually end up, I think, having a lot of guilt about food, eating things that don't agree with them, and actually having a lot more of a negative relationship with food in general. So there's an unasked question there that I'm answering, which is this a healthy way to be around food? Yes, is the answer for me. I found that it's very healthy. It doesn't, and by healthy, I don't mean just physically, I mean mentally too. It's mentally and physically healthy. So that is the concept of the square. I recommend meat and fruit, and I've tried to state the case, but there are other foods that are probably fine for a lot of people. So there's some asterisks here. Rice and roots seem to be two that people do relatively well on, and they're so prevalent in society that it might be something that you want to add to your square. So what I do recommend is with rice, you want to get rid of the plant defense chemicals, and most of that is in the brown part. So avoid brown rice. If you want to maximize and optimize your health, have some white rice. People seem to do okay with sushi. What I would say is if you're really trying to lose a lot of fat, or your focus is on fat loss, I probably wouldn't include white rice. But again, that's something that you can experiment with yourself. Like, I really am not here to be like the food Nazi and tell you what you should and shouldn't have. Like, people love white rice. I'm Persian. I actually don't care. I got over the white rice addiction, but being Persian is like 80% of the food that Persian people eat is white rice. So I get it, especially Asians and that from that part of the world, people are pretty addicted to rice. But I would say go for white rice as opposed to brown rice. And then roots. So what are roots? Roots include any type of potato, cassava, yam, taro, obviously sweet potato, garlic, onions. Just make sure all of these things are really well cooked, and I would skin them too. Get rid of the skin. Get rid of the skin for sweet potatoes and whatnot if you're going to cook it and eat it. And obviously garlic and onion, you want to get rid of the skin, because a lot of the plant defense chemicals are in the skin. Why? Because if there's an insect underground and it wants to eat the root, the first thing that it will eat is the skin. So the root places most of its plant defense chemicals in basically pesticides in the skin, in the outer layer, because it figures if I put it mostly in the outer layer, then whatever animal or insect comes to try to eat me, it will be put off by the bitterness and the poison, ultimately, or the toxins in that outer layer. So if you skin it and you cook it, you're probably okay. Pickled vegetables or fermented vegetables. Whilst I'm not a big fan of vegetables, it seems like there's a lot of health benefits to things like sauerkraut and kimchi and stuff like that. If they've been pickled and fermented, you've probably broken down the vast majority of the plant defense chemicals, and people seem to say that there's a lot of benefits to it. I never found it, to be honest. Like, I'll have a bit of kimchi if I go to like Korean barbecue or whatever. Like, if there's sauerkraut, I'll have a little bit here and there. But like, I think this whole probiotic thing is like massively overblown, and a lot of what the conversation about in nutrition is like their health benefits to a lot of things is really, really overblown. I remember taking turmeric pills, and I just didn't feel any benefit to them whatsoever. And now I realize why, because it's a root, and it's the reason that it has all these antioxidants is that is your body's way of trying to detox. The antioxidants antioxidants cascade in your body is your body trying to fight off the plant defense chemicals that are caused by turmeric, because it is a root. So not only is it not a positive, it's probably a negative. But there's some other things like probiotics that people talk about a lot. My feeling on most supplements and most clever little health hacks is those are appropriate for people who are already eating a bad diet. So once you have a good, ancestrally appropriate evolutionary diet, you don't really need things like probiotics, because your gut health is perfect. That was one of the first things I saw when I went carnivore, is like my gut just became like iron. My gut and my immune system became like iron, like super regular, and like never had any bloat, never had any stomach ache or anything like that. It's hard to describe, but you just feel like your guts are working better. So that's one of the first things. So I don't think there's any need for probiotics or prebiotics or even digestive enzymes, anything like that, when you're eating an ancestrally appropriate diet. So most supplements you could probably take and throw out. If you stay in the square, you can probably throw out 99% of those supplements. Sorry to the supplement companies or people flogging supplements out there, of which there are many. I'm going to put a bow on this. So that's the square. I recommend you find your square and you stick to it. Have really hard lines about your square too, so kind of know what you can and can't have, and just stick to it. And if you mess up, just kind of recommit to it. That is how I found the most benefits for my clients. And I don't know what the next podcast is going to be on. It may be one more nutrition thing. It may be training. I haven't figured it out. Tune in. We'll leave it a mystery, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.